to the lightning round.
Welcome.
Hello, and welcome to the Dave Kershner Lightning Round Podcast, Episode 11. I am your host, Dave Kershner. It is week 15 of the 46th Quadrennial Hunger Games, and Biden has actually made it a whole 100 days in office. Whoopee! Too bad he trashed everything in those first 3 months, roughly. And by trashed, I mean, it's like your parents went on vacation, they trusted their teenage child to stay home and not have a party. And when they got back from vacation, not only had that little bastard had a party, but he had a party for a whole week, or a whole weekend. The house is trashed, and there's 30 strangers sleeping on floors, couches, and somebody else's bed. This administration has gone out of its way to undo every single thing that Trump has done, regardless of whether or not it was a good thing. It was always going to be, Orange Man bad, we must undo it all. And that's where we're at, folks. That's where we're at. And to carry on the race conversations we've been having for the last two episodes, Biden gives a speech to a joint session of Congress where I think most of them have all been inoculated, but they're all wearing masks. If you've got the shot, take off your friggin' mask. You don't need it. Just sheer stupidity. A buddy of mine sent me a meme the other day, and it was, or maybe it was my wife. My wife sent it to me, and I sent it to some friends, and it was from the Babylon Bee, and it said the CDC now recommends that you wear a seatbelt when not in a car. And then the next day, a friend of mine sends me one back, and it says the CDC now recommends you wear a condom when you're not having sex. I think that stuff's funny. I love memes. They make me laugh. But so I had a whole slew of things that I was going to talk to you about regarding the administration and the jackassery. But I think the one thing that I want to point out, and because when you start talking to me about race, it really irritates the shit out of me. Because when I am on the street walking around before COVID, I worked in a downtown office, and, we would go out to lunch, and it really bothers me when somebody uses their own race against themselves. Because there are so many anti-discrimination laws in place that to discriminate against somebody because of the color of their skin, illegal. To discriminate against somebody because of their gender, of which there are only two, that's illegal. Age, religion. It is the most diverse set of laws for any country in the history of the planet. Yet somehow the left and the media still want you to believe America as a whole is one of the worst, most racist places to be. It's complete bullshit. It is a complete fabrication. And it is what the left is going to. This is their playbook. Ever since Obama got in office, is to divide this country again based on race lines. And they're doing this because they think that because of the color of your skin, they know how you're going to vote. But here's what happened. Biden gives his speech to a joint session of Congress, lays out his plan for his administration, which would literally bankrupt this entire country. And, I mean, you think the price of ammo is crazy now? My buddy went to a gun show I told you last week. They wanted a 50-round box. A 223 was like $60. It was or $50. It was about $1 a round. Now, plan on that being $2 a round. If that shit happens, I am a friggin' wealthy man. I'm just saying. I liked collecting ammo before it was in vogue. Daddy's got rounds. And I know how to use them. I've even got rounds for shit I don't own. Why? Bartering. That's why. But that's only one caliber. The rest of them are all for stuff that I have. But I have one caliber that I collected. Numerous. Let's just call it numerous. Let's not put a number on it. We don't need to speak about numbers. I have numerous rounds for a weapon that I don't own. Numerous rounds for a weapon that I currently can't chamber that round. And I did it exclusively for its bartering pricing. That's it. And I'll keep doing it if I see the good price come around. But I don't think that's going to be at any point during the Biden administration. Ever. They are... Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The reason I brought up Biden's speech to the joint session of Congress is because the Republicans offered up South Carolina Senator Tim Scott to give the rebuttal. Just like they do after the State of the Union. Tim Scott, a black man, gets up there and says, look, America is not racist. And the only people that have ever called me racist things are progressives, are Democrats. He points this out on live TV, and the immediate response from the left, who's supposed to be anti-discrimination, pro-black, they get out there and they start calling him Uncle Tom. And then somebody points out his name is Tim, so now they start calling him Uncle Tim. Oh my God. I was out running errands today during my lunch hour, and I was listening to Mike Gallagher. And Mike Gallagher had invited anybody that was black, African American, a listener of the show, to call in and give their assessment on what Tim Scott had to say and about race relations in the United States. And wow, I mean, as a white listener, I was very happy with what I heard. I was very proud of what I heard. And I mean, Mike Gallagher, he opened up Pandora's box, and I mean, he got an earful. I heard two young women on there that said, look, me and my family left the plantation years ago, and we ain't going back. I am not going to be held back by some politician who thinks I'm too stupid to get an ID so that I can vote. Where the hell? And this is what I was hearing. She said, basically, the other caller said, how freaking stupid do they think we are? And I mean, like, she was making a point about blacks or African Americans in general. The lady made the point. I need an ID for everything. If I want to fly and see my grandchildren, I need an ID. If I have some young man or woman checking me out at the liquor store and I'm wearing a mask and they can't tell how old I am, I need an ID. If I'm going to open up a checking account, get a new mortgage, refi my mortgage, I need an ID. If I want to buy a gun, I need an ID. But having a requirement that you need an ID to vote is racist. This lady said, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And of course, Mike Gallagher went beep during the shit comment. But there's silence, radio silence from the leftist media, from Pelosi and all of her little sycophants in the House and in the Senate. Nobody's touching what these commentators are saying with a 10-foot pole. They figure if they don't talk about it, if they don't comment on it, it didn't happen. It doesn't exist. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. He goes on TV and says, America's not racist, and the only people that ever made an issue out of me being black were progressives and Democrats. And the first thing they do as soon as the press conference is over, they call him an Uncle Tom. They call him the N-word. What? All right, that's all I wanted to say about that. And there was one other topic that I wanted to cover, and that was the results of the census that was done during Trump's presidency. They do it every 10 years. It just so happened there was a Republican in the White House this time. And so many people have fled these socialist enclaves on the coasts, like Washington and Oregon and California and New York. So many people have left these states. They legitimately lost seats in the House of Representatives. Legit! Lost seats because they lost so much of their population. That ought to tell you something. And you know what the states were that gained seats? Go ahead, take a guess. You probably don't need them. You probably don't need 3 chances. The 2 states that gained the most seats were Texas and Florida. People literally fled those 4 socialist enclaves, and they went so far as to go all the way to stark red Texas. Granted, they probably moved to little blue enclaves around Dallas and Austin and Houston, but they left because the taxes were too high, the restrictions were too grotesque. They said, look, I'm a small business owner. You just taxed me into oblivion. Congratulations, I'm closing my business and I'm taking it elsewhere. Tennessee came pretty close to picking up some seats too. But then I click on the little news link I got, and now, because the census was done during the presidency of a Republican, the Commerce Secretary has come out and claimed political interference with the final census numbers because the numbers that went into the system aren't the numbers that came out. My goodness, it sounds like an election. The votes went in, they didn't come out. And if an illegal vote went in, then it came out legal. Tell me how that happens. So, anyway, the census numbers are now in dispute. The number of seats in the House is a dispute. Why? Because if they actually change the seat numbers in the House, Pelosi's no longer Speaker. I don't know when these new seats would take effect. I'll have to look that up. But, my goodness, if we can get rid of Pelosi, oh, that would be awesome. Now, I mean, we would only have to listen to their squawking from time to time when anybody was, MSNB hee-haw and socialist CNN puts a camera in front of her face, which, they're apt to do all the time. But having her as something other than Speaker of the House would be amazeballs. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about with that. But I do want to talk about a topic that came up with a friend of mine. And so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back. And now we pause for some shameless self-promotion. So fiction isn't your bag, but you want to learn about preparedness planning and herbal remedies, or maybe you'd rather make food, not war, then pick up a copy of one of my 3 nonfiction books. Cook a delicious multi-course meal from one of the menus in just a small gathering. Get that medicinal garden going by planting some of your favorite ingredients and recipes found in home remedies, poultices, salves, and tinctures. And if you're curious about how to solve some of your prepping problems, pick up a copy of Preparing to Prepare and see what I've done and what I recommend. Now back to the show. Alright, so I went to a sporting event, and they mandated masks, which I already had an issue with. Almost got thrown out of the game twice because when I took my mask down to have a drink of my adult beverage, the little steward came running up the stairs to my section to scream at me, "Put your mask back on!" To which I replied, "No, I'm drinking. Go away, little man." The guys that I was with at the game, they all looked at me and I said, "I don't give a shit if I get thrown out of this game. I drove. I have the keys to the car. So if I get thrown out of the game, I'll be waiting for you in the parking lot. I'm not going to leave you. But if I get thrown out, that'll be my choice." Some of the guys I was with were vaccinated. Some weren't. I think 3 were, 2 weren't. And I had commented and I said, "Oh, well, there's your herd mentality right there, boy. As long as we hang out with you guys, we ain't going to get it." But anyway, that's not the whole point of that story. I was talking to a guy that I was sitting next to, and he and his wife, they're first-time home buyers. And they want to get the hell out of Franklin County, which is the most populous county in the state of Ohio. They both grew up in rough parts of town. His in-laws' house currently has several bullet holes in it, if you know what I'm talking about now. They want to get the hell out of Columbus. So they're looking up more toward Cleveland. And I said, "You're actually going from bad to worse." And he said, "Well, not like downtown Cuyahoga County, Cleveland proper. They're looking for land somewhere in between, but closer to Cleveland than Columbus, because I guess the wife has family in that area." And he said, "Oh man, my wife's just spending a lot of time on Zillow and Realtor.com looking for stuff." And I said, "How much land are you looking for?" He goes, "As much as I can afford." You and me both, brother. So I pointed him to a couple websites. One is the Mossy Oak website, and they do stuff. You can click on your individual state on their homepage, and then a county map will load, and if you zoom in, it'll tell you how many properties do they have listed in each county. And if you know the county that you're interested in, you can click on that and it'll tell you what's available there. You can also use their filtering criteria to say that, I'm looking for a minimum of 20 acres in, this county in this state, or you can just leave it set to a particular state. So anything that's in their system that's 20 acres or more for a particular state, you'll see all the results. And then you can decide how far you want to travel or how close you are to certain services, if you need to be near doctors or hospitals because of health concerns or whatever. You can figure that out there. Another one that I pointed them to was landsofamerica.com. And this one's more of a national deal where, I just clicked on it and I can go buy 13,000 acres in Lincoln County, New Mexico for the bargain price of $7 million. Anybody got some money they want to loan me? But, that's the kind of stuff you'll find here. But you can tell, even on lands, it's lands with an S, landsofamerica.com, all one word. You can tell it, a minimum acreage as I'm looking for is, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever acres. You can tell them what your maximum price is, and you can just put in a state, And then that got me to thinking, I know that on the Survival Blog website for James Wesley Rawls, I believe his son or sons opened up their own realty brokerage type firm. So you've got Black Rifle Realty, you've got Survival Realty. There's all kinds of stuff. It really just depends on what it is you want to do. Like for me, I want that land and the availability of open acreage, timbered acreage, so that I can, over time, turn it into a self-sustaining homestead of sorts. And one of the things that is one of the topics that was in my nonfiction book, Preparing to Prepare, which is why I gave you the commercial that I did, was things that you should look for in your land purchase. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's fresh in my mind, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine in the middle of a soccer game. We're watching the action and he's asking questions. Hey man, what do I do about this and that? And I'm trying to tell him, I'm like, look, you need to make sure that you have these qualities and these characteristics. And I don't know if it was AI technology or I forgot to turn something off on my phone, but I legitimately got an email last night, and it was titled, "Leaving the City? Here's what to look for in a new community." And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I've had crazy stuff show up in social media feeds just because I had a conversation with my wife. So either one of our phones has got Siri listening all the time, and then I get an advertisement or a commercial or an ad for it. It comes in on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or what. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That's how far our society's come. You just barely even think it, and it shows up in your feeds. But so I got this article. It came from selfsufficientprojects.com, and one of the first things that they say you should do is try to avoid communities. I mean, they're assuming you're moving into a community, but if you do, you don't have to. But if you do move into a community, you want to make sure that there's no homeowner association. Because the HOA can mandate anything and everything from, the length of your grass, the height of your fence, whether or not you can have animals outside of dogs and cats. That's chickens, that's rabbits, that's goats and sheep, and they can have restrictions on how big of a shed you can have, or even if you have a barn, they can ban whether or not you're able to do water harvesting, rain barrels, stuff like that. I know, for example, in the suburb that I'm in, I can do rainwater catchment because we have a very high water table, and it won't harm that. But I can't have chickens. I was all about to get me some over at the Tractor Supply. And my wife, as I'm sending her pictures and videos of me playing with chickens, she legitimately called the city and said, "Are we allowed to have chickens?" And they said, "Hell no! You can't have chickens? Where do you think you live? In the country? So she immediately called me back at Tractor Supply. She said, go put the chickens back. You're not allowed to have them. I'm like, well, this is crap. So it's not only HOAs that you have to be cognizant of, but it's also city bylaws. So you need to be thinking about that. When the article goes on to say, if you're looking for property, what kind of water sources are nearby? What kind of people are nearby? So one of the things that I would tell you, and this article will also tell you this, if you're trying to move out to, whether it's the sticks or to further out in a new community outside of, the outer loop, if you live near a city that has one, go out there before you even start looking at homes. And the general area that you kind of want to move to. Maybe it's just the county. Drive the county. Go look around. Go see what kind of flags are on people's houses. Go look and see what kind of bumper stickers people have. Because I'll tell you right now, when I get to move out of this taxation nightmare in my suburb, my TIFs, the tax incentive financing, just when I get out of here, man, I am not looking back. But I am not moving to a community or an area where there's an assload of Biden signs and flags and Bernie bumper stickers. Nope. Not going to do it. I'm not leaving one nightmare to go to another one that I may have created on my own. So pay attention to what's going on when you're looking at a certain area, or even if you're looking at a particular house. Say you whittled it down to a house that had some acreage, Go drive by the neighbor's house. What kind of stuff do they have out there? Is it full of broken down old cars? Is it, well maintained? You gotta look and see what's going on. And this article went on to say, don't start your search at the top end of your budget. Start your search at the bottom end of your budget. That way, if you find something, a little gem, you haven't shot your wad. And you've got plenty of money left over for improvements. Things that you want to implement that, unless it came with it, you're going to have to install. So just be cognizant of that. And there's a new thing now that you need to be aware of, is what is the availability of the internet? Because thanks to the pandemonium induced by the left and the Democrats in shutting down our country and our economy for a virus that literally kills 0.005% of the people that get it. Shut down the world because the mortality rate was less than 0.1%. It boggles the mind when you hear that the mortality rate is 0.05 or less for people that got it, but they shut down the planet. I don't know how you're not pissed off like me. I really, it just drives me crazy. It's gotten to the point now my wife just tells me to shut up, and I haven't even said anything. We pull up to the store, we're going to go in. When she sees me reaching for the mask in the door of the car, she knows what's coming next. And it's usually an F-bomb, and it's usually about the mask and the mask mandates. She's actually gotten to the point now where I've conditioned her to preempt me. Where she just looks at me and goes, shut up! I don't want to hear it anymore. Put your mask on. So, anyway, but now, because of COVID, the workforce is likely not ever going to return to what it looked like in 2019. Because businesses have figured out that they don't have to pay for brick and mortar storefronts anymore. They don't have to pay large rent payments to other, like, I don't know, nefarious landlords or whatever. If they don't own the building, they're paying rent. They got a lease. They don't have to make those payments anymore. Why? Because 2020 taught this country and every single employer in the country that unless you're actually in manufacturing of goods, you can work remotely. I have met a lot of people in the IT world over my 20 plus 25 years of experience. And I've worked on a lot of projects, and not everybody was in the same town. And not everybody was always going to be in the office. You know, we had the ability to work from home. And now with COVID, people literally packed up their shit and moved. Why? Because they had the internet. I don't have to be in Pittsburgh anymore. I don't have to be in Columbus or Cleveland or Indianapolis. I can go wherever the hell I want to go. As long as I got an internet connection, and you don't even need an internet connection. All you need is a phone that's capable of using cellular data to create a hotspot for your phone to pick up a Wi-Fi signal off of. That's how far technology has come. That employers can no longer insist on people being physically in the office. So when you're looking for property, and you're looking for houses, and you're looking at stuff that's more rural, you need to be paying attention to your ability to get the internet. Whether that's an AT&T direct dish or direct TV dish, or whether it's, you know, the big two in our area or Spectrum and Wide Open West. So you need to figure that out. Plus, if you're going to homeschool, but one of, you know, say and this may be misogynistic, but say mom is homeschooling and dad's working, you might require the internet for some of the assignments that the kids are going to do if they're in homeschooling. But I don't think it's necessarily a requirement. But you need to be paying attention to that. And there are a couple other things that you need to be looking for. One is the crime rate statistics. So if you're looking outside of the Beltway, rural area, find the crime statistics for that little town, that little township, that county, whatever it is. But you need to be looking beyond just the crime statistics. You need to be looking at what the crimes were. Sometimes the crime statistics will break it down to a more granular level that says, oh, in, you know, over the span of 2015 to 2020, so 5 years, we had, I don't know, just 500 crimes. None of them were murders. 75 of them were break-ins. Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, but it'll break it down to that, right? So it'll tell you how many car burglaries there were, how many people were, you know, busted for being peeping toms and voyeurs, or people who did shit to children, whatever it is. But you can be looking at that kind of stuff, and that'll help guide you on what you're looking for. The other one might be the climate. So I live on the eastern edge of what's considered the Midwest. If I drive 30 minutes to my east, I'm in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountain Range. On the western side of the Appalachian Mountain Range, we start the foothills. And they don't stop for another 6 to 7 hours. That's how wide the mountain range is. Even though it's not the Rockies, they don't have the tall peaks. But the Appalachian Mountain Range is actually older. So wind and rain and weather have had more of an effect on it. But you need to be looking at the climate. So you need to be looking at altitude. You need to be looking at the amount of precipitation that you get, not just in rainfall, but in snowfall. Because snow melt will mess you up if you're not prepared for it. So if you're in a place that gets a lot of snow, you need to make sure that the roof structure can hold it. If you're in a place that gets a lot of rain, you need to make sure that that property has the ability to move water quickly. But climate also comes into play if you want to do what I want to do, which is make it somewhat self-sufficient. Make it a little homestead, have a garden, have some animals. You need to know how much water you're able to capture so that you can feed said animals. How long is the growing season? That's really important information. So don't just go out there and go, oh, look, we can afford it. Well, yes, you can, but that creek that you're really excited about that runs through the southwest corner of your property, well, if you follow that creek upstream, that same creek goes through a hog farm. I wouldn't touch that water if you paid me. So you need to be paying attention to not just the property you're looking at. You need to be looking at the property in the surrounding area. And the last thing the article goes into is, well, it has local work, but it really depends on your trade. So for me, as a white collar employee, I can work anywhere because of COVID. I'm perfectly content to stay in my house. The only reason I would go back to the office is to see my friends again. Not because of the work. It'd be more like playtime. I want to go see my friends so that we can go to lunch. So that we can bullshit about mundane things. It's the social aspect that I would go back to the office for, not because of the work. The work can suck it. I'll do that from here. And to be honest with you, my wife is, she's looking at me like, you need to get the hell out of the house, Dave. And I'm looking at her like, no, I don't. Because here's my problem. Every single employer that I have worked for, they've given it a fair shot at trying to build a culture. They want people to get together after hours. Let's go have a happy hour. Let's do team building, team bonding. Let's go to a sporting event. Let's go to a Columbus Clippers game or a Blue Jackets game or a Columbus Crew game or whatever. And I always look at them like they're crazy. I said, look, you paid me to be nice to you for 8 hours. You're going to put liquor in me, shit's going to get said. And you might not like it. So no, I'm not going to your happy hour. I'm not going to your team bonding event. I will do my job, and I will do it from home. Thank you, Democrats. I'm staying home. And if I really want to be any more militant about it, I'm going to tell them I'm staying home, and then I'm going to make calendar appointments with my friends a couple times a month to say, hey, let's meet for lunch. That way my wife is happy. I'm getting out of the house. I'm getting my social interactivity. But I have no desire to go back to the office for the work. And I'm not relocating to wherever the hell this project is. I'll tell you that. Nope, not gonna do it. So, that's all I got to say about that. But, when it comes to your land purchase, even if you're just looking for... So what my friend was looking for, what would make it better and easier for him, is if he was able to find land in the county that he was looking for, but preferably one that came with a house. He didn't necessarily want to have to be a first-time home buyer, and the first time he comes out of the chute, he's got to build the damn thing. There's enough hassle and stress associated with buying a house. And if you've never done it before, now you're going to add the stress of dealing with the architect and the builder and code compliance and inspections. No, you don't need that. Oh, look, it started to rain again. So if you hear anything in the background, it's that. But one of the things that I would tell you when you're looking at your land is you need to look and see what your available food and water sources are. And by that, I'm talking about wildlife. So what I would tell you to do is you can go out and inspect the land if you can get involved in like a fun, family activity that's like orienteering. And by doing that, you'll learn a valuable skill in how to navigate in the wilderness, but it'll allow you to go out and kind of visually inspect the area to see what kind of sign is out there. Or do you see tree rubbings from deer, or do you see tree rubbings from feral hogs, wild boar? Do you see turkey tracks, deer tracks? Do you see scat? What kind of predators are out there? What kind of migratory animals are there? Are there birds, ducks and geese? All kinds of stuff. But you need to be able to walk the area and see what's out there. That'll tell you. And take a look. Go to the land that you're looking at while you're watching the weather forecast and see how that land handles water. If you have a natural area that, like a depression, that retains water for a couple of days after a heavy after a heavy downpour, you might want to think about putting a pond right there. That'll give you an open water source that you could use in an emergency when society collapses because the Democrats are spending too much money and they're doing everything they can to kill this country. Maybe I'm becoming cynical in my old age, but that's what I see. That's what I'm doing as I look for property. I'm looking for things that I can harvest, whether that's tree sap for maple syrup, what kind of flowering wild plants are out there. Do I have acreage to put in an orchard? Do I have acreage to put in a large garden? Do I have wooded areas that I can contour and manipulate to draw food sources into that area? So if you've got an orchard, say you've got enough acreage that you can put in an orchard. Well, depending on what you plant, obviously it's going to pull wildlife. Hey, now I've got a protein source because I can shoot those little buggers. So you can also look into beekeeping. There's all kinds of clubs and things that you can do to help learn skills and trades to help you make that land self-sustaining. So when you're doing that kind of stuff, you want to also look at and see how defensible it is. So you're looking to see if there's any draws or any ridges. Where does if wildlife is naturally funneled into or through an area, humans are going to be funneled there too. So if you have to defend the area, that's important information. But you also, we talked about the internet, but we need to talk about communication as well. So when you're out walking the land and, or maybe you've already purchased the land, you need a way to communicate in a closed circuit type of scenario. So you make sure that you can use little walkie-talkies to be able to communicate back to the house or to the barn or whatever it is. So, but that's communication. That's a closed loop, if you will. But you need to also maybe think about how else could you communicate. So if society broke down and you had no power, how are you going to communicate or get information? So that's where a ham radio license or just having a ham radio in general will come in handy. When you're looking at your land, make sure that there's a place that maybe you could build a rack and mount some solar panels to keep batteries charged so that you can continue to use your ham radio. I actually have a portable ham walkie that I bought several of, and I've used them on hunting trips, and they're great. We didn't really just use it for the ham radio piece at that particular time. I bought some smaller, cheaper ones, like a 4-pack or a 6-pack of those. I bought that at like Walmart. But those are great for hunting trips when you're in certain blinds and you're not too far apart. But for longer distances, the one that's got the built-in ham was great. I actually tuned it in, and we were listening to some ham radio stuff for, I want to say they were probably 50 miles away. And I mean, it gets into the technical and ionosphere and radio waves and bouncing stuff, and you know, that's not what this show's about, but you need to be thinking about that. The elevation. So if you're higher up, you know, your growing season is going to be different. Your precipitation, annual rainfall, snowfall, snowmelt, that's all going to be different. You need to be thinking about that, as well as your soil composition. If you're going to be anywhere near the mountains, whether that's in northern Idaho, or if it's on the western side or eastern side of the Appalachian Range, there's going to be a lot of rock. And you need to know how deep it is. Is the acreage tillable for farming or for gardening or what have you? Or are you going to be spending a lot of time replacing discs on your plow because you just snapped one off, cutting into some damn rock? So you need to be thinking about that one. And we already kind of covered it, but resource availability goes back to, you know, available food sources. Can you collect enough water? Can you collect enough protein? Can you raise enough protein? You know, if you're in an area that's really wet all year round, but it's not considered a wetland, you need to look at the livestock you're going to put out there. So this big picture, but these are all the things that run through my mind when I talk to people about what to look for in a land purchase. All right, so you're looking at crime statistics. You know, the community as a whole. What kind of restrictions do I have? What's the property been zoned for? You need to look at all of that stuff. But you also need to look and see, all right, if you don't have any restrictions, HOA or city bylaws or anything like that, then, you know, now it's about skill acquisition. And what are the characteristics and qualities, good and bad, for the property that you're looking at? And it goes well beyond price. You need to be looking at food availability, water transference, water reservations, meaning like, can I contour the land to move water to where I want it and then retain that water for not only wildlife but for emergency scenarios? How close is the water table to the surface of the land so that you know how deep of a well that you need to put in? Is there enough room, and is it conducive to having a septic field? You know, if you're trying to get away from the city and the various city amenities, that means that you need to be more and more self-sufficient, and you need to be thinking about these things. So that's basically, in the span of 2 hours, I communicated all of that to him, and he was texting a lot of it to his wife during the game, who was immediately firing back with different properties that she had found that were within their price range, because they didn't know any better. They were first-time home buyers. They're young, they're inexperienced, and they went with, you know, easily downloaded apps on their phone like Zillow and Realtor.com. And I'm like, look, man, get on a computer so you can see good full-size pictures, so you can see if there's a problem, whether that's a problem you see on the map, given the proximity to an interstate, or toward you know, the original rural route, like Route 40, as opposed to I-40 two completely different roads. But they run parallel to one another because one replaced the other. So, you got to be thinking about proximity, not only to people and towns and cities, but you need to be thinking about proximity to major thoroughfares. So, these are the things I think of. These are the things that keep my brain churning at night. These are things that kind of keep me excited about preparedness and going and moving forward to that next step. So, that's a wrap on episode 11. And Biden's a joke, so don't ever forget it. So you guys have a good weekend and a good week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Happy Hunger Games. And may the odds be ever in your favor.